Howdy YouTube, Esnix here with a little follow-up video. There was a topic I meant to cover in my last update to the Ezarcher project here, and I mentioned it in the last video, but I never got around to it. Memory just slipped there. It's the issue in the Calamares installer of assigning the correct mount options in FS tab during installation. So we're going to go over to the Calamares website here and take a look at some of the module configuration files. One in particular, the mount file, or the mount.conf. So let's open that up here. And this is the default mount file. And towards the bottom, it gives an example of mount options, how to set them up. And the default mount option for an EFI partition is defaults umask equals 0077. Now defaults are fine. Umask sets permissions so no one can look inside that folder except for root. Now, you'll notice the file system is EFI. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to my Ezarcher 240309 ISO, and we'll take a quick peek at the mount.conf file I use. So I'll go into etc, Calamares, modules, mount. Make it bigger so we can see. I stripped out all the comments, I just leave the code. Now, if you'll notice, my file system EFI options are just defaults. What I noticed is that whether I put defaults, comma, umask 0077 or not, all I got was defaults. So we're going to take a look at changing this so it matches the example in the Calamares source code tree. So let's close that. Let's open it in an editor with sudo. So sudo nano mount.conf, because I want to make the example of this install match the example source in Calamares, just to show you what I mean. So we'll go down to the right line. We'll add umask equals 0077, and we'll save the file. So now when we launch Calamares, it will use the file with the new settings, not the ones in the default, my default. So let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. And let's start the installer. Install system, live password, and next, next, next. Go for erase disk, swap. So we'll have an EFI system partition, a root, and a swap. And this install will progress until it's finished, and then we'll reboot. And we'll take a look at the FS tab and how that EFI partition is actually mounted. Now, to remind you, what it should get these settings, defaults and umask for the EFI file system. I think what we'll see, well, I know what we'll see, is that it will not get the umask 0077 setting, even though it's clearly there at the time I started up the installer. Now, that umask setting really just prevents other users other than root from looking inside the EFI directory. I don't know if that's a super serious security setting or whether it's just to keep meddling eyes from those files. And there's not a whole lot in there. There's the EFI stub files for starting up the system, and that's about it. Everything else, when I install through Ezarcher through Calamares, all the other boot files are in the boot folder. The EFI folder is totally separate. It's mounted EFI/EFI. So we're slowly filling up the file system. Now, if you want, you can certainly add the umask equals 0077 to your own FS tab after installation, and you will in effect achieve the same result as doing it during the installation, of course. So hopefully this won't take too much longer. The slideshow is very basic, just gives a little bit of information and the link back to SourceForge. While this is going, let's just head on over here for a moment. Take a look at some of the download numbers. Download numbers are looking pretty healthy. We're getting 41 on the Cinnamon, 64 on the KDE, 35 on the LXQT, that's high, 12 on the Mate, and 65 on the XFCE. So I can gauge the popularity. XFCE and KDE, of course, are the two most popular. Cinnamon is popular, I think, only because it's the download link by default. And it's alphabetically the first one that gets uploaded, so it gets the spot. Now, the algorithm that SourceForge uses eventually will pick the more popular ISO and make that the default with the green download button. I also updated the screenshots to show the latest KDE in the screenshots, so hopefully that's of help to someone. Discussion. Yep. A fairly moderate level of discussion, at least for my project. Let's take a quick peek, see how the install is going. Oh, we're almost done. Cool. Talk my way through another installation. Perfect. So done. Let's go ahead and restart. We don't need to save. Very good. You can see I use the LTS kernel in all of my ISOs now. If you want another kernel, you can install it after the system is up and running. Okay, we're at the installed system. You can tell by the username EasyTest, which is my typical installed system name, username. Let's go ahead and make the screen a little bigger. And let's head on over to the file manager And the EFI system partition we can obviously get into. You can see the stub files there. That's all that's there. Let's go ahead and look at the properties here. Permissions are read-write for root, read-only for group, and read-only for others. That is not typical of an EFI system partition, and it's certainly not with the umask 0077. If we open up a terminal and do sudo mount, we'll be able to see the EFI system partition right here. And you can see the fmask is 0022, dmask 0022. Those should be 0077, 0077. If we look at the FS tab, we can see the EFI system partition is only mounted with defaults. So it did not pick up the umask option specifically specified in Calamares mount.conf file. So whether that's there or not, the way that file is written, the mount.conf file, has no effect on the EFI system partition. The reason the EFI system partition is only getting the defaults option is because the EFI system partition, EFI is not the file system. So when we're over here looking at the file system, EFI, that does not actually describe this line. This line, the file system, is actually vfat. That is the file system. When I change the mount.conf file to read vfat here instead of EFI, we actually get the result we want, or the result suggested in this file. I'll show you. Let's log out, shut down. I've already done the installation, second installation here. So let's open that up and boot it up. And what we'll see is that changing the file system type to vfat actually produces the result we wanted. Now this installation is done already. The Calamares configuration file is no longer in the etc directory, but, well, there it is. But if we go to the template, well, we don't even have to go to the template. The package build folder, settings for Calamares, modules, mount. You can see that I have changed the file system to vfat for this installation. Now what that gets us is an EFI folder that we don't have permission to even open. What we get when we do sudo mount on the EFI system partition, we get a fmask of 0077 and a dmask of 0077, just what we specified. If we look at the FS tab for this installation, I went right past it, we get defaults umask 0077 because we accurately described in the mount.conf file the file system rather than the mount, the EFI mount. So the file system type vfat gave us what we wanted. The file system, which isn't a file system, EFI, didn't give us what we wanted. So the documentation is a little off in the Calamares mount module configuration file here. This should read vfat in order to apply what we want to apply. You can see the rest of this disk is a BTRFS file system, and it applies my choices for mounting a BTRFS file system. Defaults, no A time, no discard, and no auto defrag. The reason I go with no discard is in systemd, in timers, I set the FS trim timer by default. So that runs weekly and runs the FS trim command on your disk, which is, to me, the much more preferable way of discarding unused or previously used blocks on the storage device. Hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully it explained what I wanted to explain. What I'll wind up doing is probably respin the ISOs pretty soon. Might wait a little bit to see if Plasma updates come down in the next few days. It's not a big deal. You can add umask equals 0077 to your own FS tab and achieve the same result. Make sure to edit it as root, of course. And you should be fine. You should probably be fine even if you don't. As I said, I think it's more of a cosmetic issue rather than a real security issue, especially when the only two items in that entire partition are the EFI bootloader stubs. And that's it. So there's not a whole lot there to worry about, and certainly nothing personal. So you can feel safe. You can use the ISOs as they are. You can modify the FS tab if you wish. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. As I said, I will update the ISOs with the new module configuration file, but it's certainly nothing to shy away from in the meantime. So have fun, be safe, take care. You'll see me in another video, folks. Bye-bye.